Chinavision sent me over a new Android tablet, an Android 2.2 8-inch tablet called the LeoTab, and they're currently selling this for $99, which is about £63. So I'm interested to see what you can get for $99 in a tablet, plus postage and packing, of course. So let's open the box and see what you get. Well, it's quite a nice looking device. I'll talk you around the different accessories that come here. Well, there's a power charger. Now, look at this here. It's 9 volt. Now, remember that because I'll come back to that later. On the other end of that is a sort of normal plug, not a USB plug. And you've got an adapter to plug it into a UK plug. And then there's this dongle thing, which has a sort of dock connector on one end, which goes into the bottom of the tablet, and on the other end you've got an RJ45 and a USB socket, and those are primarily for attaching to modems. And then you get the instruction booklet as well, of course, which is quite thick and has a lot of information in it, although I will be honest, I haven't looked at any of it, which was probably a bit of a silly idea because I've never used an Android device before. Anyway, we'll look at the specifications. It's got an 8-inch touchscreen at 800 by 600. It's a resistive touchscreen, not a capacitive. The CPU is running at 800 MHz. It's got 256 meg of RAM and 2 GB of ROM. You'll have to supply your own memory if you want to store anything on, and that goes on micro SD cards up to 32 gig. The battery life says it's 6 hours. I haven't tested that, so you'll just have to believe them. The Wi-Fi is 802.11bg, and the Android operating system is Android 2.2. I think it's only fair to say what was left out to keep the costs down, so that's GPS, Bluetooth, 802.11n, a 3G SIM slot, a capacitive touchscreen, or any kind of built-in storage memory. Right, so let's have a look at the tablet itself. Well, it's a black plastic device. The colour reminds me a little bit of the Kindle's plastic, but not on the back here where it's rather glossy. As you can see here, there's a couple of holes, and I think those are speakers at the bottom, and that one in the middle is probably some kind of ventilation, but I'm not entirely sure about that. Flipping the device over, on the bottom here is where all the connectors are, so from left to right you've got the power cable, the reset hole, a headphones, micro SD card slot, a microphone somewhere in the middle there, mini USB, an on-off button, and a dock connector thing, which I'll just plug this dongle into now. Now, the idea behind this is that you're able to connect it to a network cable or plug in one of various 3G USB modems that are listed in the manual as being compatible, but it would be quite bulky if you were to carry that around with a 3G modem hanging out. Now let's go and stick some memory into that memory card slot there. So I'll just go and get myself some micro SD memory. Right, here we go. I'm going to be using a Class 10 16GB micro SD card. These have come down quite a lot in price recently. Now pay attention to that picture on the front there next to the slot. If you were to put the card in that way up, it would get stuck. They've got the picture on the wrong way around. You need to put the card in this way up. Now on the front of the device you've got 3 rather clicky buttons. From left to right, that's a home button, a back button and a menu button, which are used in most applications. Now, I don't know if you can see this on the video, but the plastic here has got this kind of brushed aluminium effect to it. But it definitely is plastic, which you can tell if you tap it. To give you an idea of the size of the LeoTab, here it is on the left with its 8-inch screen. In the middle is an HP touchpad, and on the right is an iPad version 1. And as I do this flyby with the camera, you'll be able to see that they're all very similar in thickness, if not in screen size. And they've all got a 4:3 ratio screen. Right, so let's try and turn it on. We'll hold the on-off slider into the on position for a second or so. Now, if there was any power in it, it would be turning on now, but there isn't. So we'll have a look at the instruction leaflet to see what we have to do to charge it up. And it says you cannot charge the battery using the USB cable. Now that's quite significant because that means you have to carry around that power adapter that I mentioned before. And that's because it's a 9-volt power adapter and a USB socket will only supply it with 5 volts. So we'll have to plug in that power adapter. And now we'll switch it on and have a look at it. Now it is actually switching on this time, but you can't see it. As with all tablets, it doesn't work very well in bright daylight. It's rather reflective. So we'll take it into a dark room and have a closer look at it. But first I mentioned that this tablet has no inbuilt 3G or GPS. It doesn't have a massive battery life and it has to be recharged from that special adapter. So to me that makes it a tablet that's more suited to staying inside the house on the coffee table. So let's have a look at a list of the things that I use my iPad for when it's confined within the house. So that list in no particular order is email, an RSS reader, a Kindle ebook reader, browsing the internet, and a little bit of casual gaming. So first off we'll see how those things look on the iPad, and then we'll try and replicate them on the LeoTab. So here's the email on the iPad. I'm sure you're familiar with email, so we'll skip past that. This is an RSS reader that I use. There's lots of different ones. I like RSS readers because it enables me to look through different websites very quickly without having to view the websites themselves. Now here's the Kindle ebook reader, which you can use in the dark, of course, on the iPad, which is something the Kindle you can't do itself, but then again you can't use the iPad outside to read. And the good thing about the Kindle applications is that they all sync with one another, so that wherever you stop reading a book you can carry on elsewhere. So now here we are trying to do something on the internet, which is of course probably the main use that people put these little tablets to, and you can browse the internet while you're sat watching the television, and you can decide arguments. For example, what's the name of that chap in that film? You just go straight onto IMDb and you can kill every conversation dead within minutes. So we'll look at the China Invasion website here, and we'll just look at the LeoTab itself on the website, and we'll try and do the same thing with both devices. So I'm going to click on the LeoTab here, and then we'll just do a little bit of a pinch and zoom on the price and a scroll down the page and see how that looks on both the iPad and then the LeoTab later. So there you go, there's the pinch and zoom, £63.25, just under $100, and here's the scroll down the page to look at the different pictures at the bottom. Now I bet you never saw this one coming. Of course this is Angry Birds. Now this time I'm playing this on the HP touchpad, and the only reason for that is that the footage that I shot with it being played on my iPad somehow got corrupted inside the camcorder. But the good thing with Angry Birds is that it plays the same on every device, so it's a good benchmark to test things against. Right, now finally it's time for the LeoTab to take the spotlight and see if it's up to those tasks. But the first thing we'll do is we'll switch it on and see how long it takes to boot up. So I've put the stopwatch at the left of the screen here, and we'll just speed the footage up because we don't want to hang around forever. Now it takes just under 2 minutes to boot from cold. Now of course usually you leave these things in standby, but that's not a bad performance at all. Now I mentioned before that I'm not at all familiar with Android devices, so I don't know if this is a standard unlock screen, but I just thought I'd show you it anyway. So let's start off at where we finished off on the other one by trying to play Angry Birds. Well, it loads up all right, but when you actually try and play it you find that unfortunately the LeoTab is just too slow to play it properly. As you can see from this footage here, everything's taking an awful long time, and when it scrolls across to the left here you can see how slow it really is. So unfortunately you're not going to be playing any games on the LeoTab. Well, not any kind of action games. You might be able to play sort of things like chess, I suppose, or some sort of board games, but that's about it really. Maybe a bit of cards or something. Now, one thing with Angry Birds, you can always speed it up. You can take off the background scenery, and it does make it slightly more playable, but still I've got to say it's not something that I find smooth enough to be enjoyable. So just something to bear in mind, if you are going to get the LeoTab, you better cross games off the list as one of the things that it will do well. Right, so let's move on to something else and see if we're a little bit more successful with that. Google Mail comes pre-installed on the device, so let's just have a look at that, and it seems to be working fine. Now, most of the programs that you do need for normal day-to-day use are already included on the device. This might be standard for Android things, I'm not too sure. As I mentioned, it's all new to me. Now, there were two versions of virtually every program. There were like 2 mail programs and 2 Internet Explorer type programs. I don't know why there were 2 of everything, but at least it gives you a bit of choice. And you can always download other things if you want from the app market, which is what I did. I put Opera on as an additional browser, and here I am just moving it around on the screens. I got quite familiar with the Android operating system after only a few hours use. It's quite intuitive really. So here we are, we've loaded up Opera. Now this is one of the faster browsers I believe on portable devices. and each of them seem to have different pros and cons. One of the browsers on here let you use YouTube and play the videos in the browser. The other one wanted to play videos outside of the browser. Opera's got this thing where it kind of compresses the graphics down, like you can see here, into sort of blocks and then loads them in later. It's all to do with sort of compressing the images down so as you to get the maximum speed out of devices that have slow connections. Now this of course has 802.11b and G rather than 802.11n, so I suppose if you're on one of those networks this might speed things up a little bit. But we'll just zoom in on the LeoTab here again. So we'll just find the device on the screen and click on it. As you can see, I'm not having any problems here moving around. I'm quite surprised really, but the resistive touchscreen is quite responsive. It's never going to be as good as a capacitive touchscreen, but it doesn't stop you clicking on things and even doing a bit of a pinch zoom there with 2 fingers. I didn't think you could do multi-finger things on a resistive screen, but apparently you can, as long as you use your fingernails like I'm doing now to tap and zoom. It doesn't like fingers as much as fingernails, so I had to grow a fingernail to better use this. As you know from some of my other videos, I tend to bite them off, which is a bit of a problem. But as you can see here, looking at the screen, you're much better off just tapping it like that. You get a much more accurate tap. Now, one thing that I will mention, the keyboard on the iPad, which a lot of people don't really like but can sort of get along with. As you can see, I can type on this quite reasonably. It's not as good typing on the LeoTab, I'm afraid. You have to do really one finger typing because the trouble is when you're doing multi-finger typing, it tends to miss off one of the fingers if you type too quickly. So you're best just tapping away one finger at a time. So you wouldn't really want to write a massive book on this device. Right, let's try something else now. Let's move in and try a RSS reader. This is Google Reader. And again, we'll just click on some of the stories on Engadget on their RSS feed and see how that looks. Right, now there's a little bit of a delay here, and this is something you've got to get used to. There are slight delays on these things that you probably wouldn't experience on a really expensive tablet like the iPad, but you've got to remember how much you're paying. So here we go, we're zooming through the different articles. It's not too bad. I say some of these delays are probably down to the fact I'm on 802.11g rather than 802.11n. That's not going to help anything as far as speed goes. But as you can see, revolving the screen is pretty quick, changing from horizontal to vertical orientation. I was quite surprised at that. Now one thing here, we're looking at some photos, again doing a bit of a kind of 2-finger zoom up. These are a couple of photos that come on the device. I haven't put any on here myself. But it just shows you what kind of things you can do using it as maybe a picture frame. And then finally here, we'll just get into the Kindle reader and we'll look at the same book that we were looking at before. It's asking me there if I wanted to start from the same page I left it on the other device. And you're better off on this one just tapping at the edges to go through the different pages. And again, I'll just spin it round here and put it into a vertical orientation to make it more like the page of a book. And the 800 by 600 resolution screen is actually pretty sharp. I don't know if it comes across on the video. There's a lot of compression, of course, on the video, but it is really quite a nice screen. The LeoTab is capable of playing YouTube clips, as you can see here, although they can get rather jerky, although this very much depends on the type of video that's being played. One of the big features of having an Android tablet is the ability to download and install additional applications on it, and you can do this through the App Store, and I found this a very easy thing to do. For example, I put on this BBC News application. This allows you to look through today's news headlines easily, read articles about them, but also you can click on embedded video in the articles and watch that while still in the application. And these videos play fine, which is in contrast to the YouTube clips, which I mentioned were rather jerky. So the video on this thing is rather a mixed bag. As long as you've got the right type of video in the right file format, it plays quite smoothly. For example, this little video clip that I put on here of a cat and mouse show that I saw on holiday plays fine because it's in standard definition. But this clip that I took of a cruise ship is in 720p HD and it's jerking along like nobody's business. So you really need to find the right formats that this thing plays well, and that doesn't include things like X264 or 720p. Although that being said, it does come with this rather HD clip of Escape to Witch Mountain, which plays fine, so maybe you just have to encode the video to suit the device. Right, so what have I learned during my time with the LeoTab? Well, I think the main thing that I've learned is that you really need to set your expectations at the right level for a device like this. I've got so used to things happening instantly that a delay of a second or so can feel like an age. But unfortunately I've been spoilt. I'm lucky enough to be able to afford an iPad. For many people, even the cheapest model of iPad is way beyond their budget. Until recently it would have been impossible to get a device like this for less than £100. The Chumby that I bought a couple of years ago cost an awful lot more and did an awful lot less. So if all you need is access to the internet, email and other simple applications, then the LeoTab will give you all that and a little bit more for a very low price. So all that remains is for me to thank a couple of people. First off, Chinavasion for sending the LeoTab over. The web address you see on the screen there at the bottom is the direct link to the product on their website. And finally, of course, thanks to you for watching.